Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Today's question comes from Celeste, and Celeste writes in a pretty big message. I admit I abbreviated it just a little bit. Celeste's message: I have a Tennessee walking horse gelding turning 13 next week. I've had him for 3 years now, but this is the first time that he's lived alone. I keep him at home, so we're together every day. He's always been at the bottom of the pecking order with the other horses, and was a bit nervous. He always followed along on the trails, not comfortable in the lead. I sold my other horse in the fall, and he has adjusted to living alone, but that took several months, and he's still a little jumpy at things that never used to faze him, even at home in his comfort zone. The real problem is riding out alone. He lacks the confidence to go where I ask, and I'm not all that experienced as he is my first horse. So neither of us is confident, and I suppose he does not trust that I will keep him safe out in the scary world. On the ground, he's 100% with me, even at liberty. How do I get this trust to transfer under saddle? When riding, he's like a different horse. He fights going where I ask. He's even skittish about walking up the driveway. Head high, pacey, very nervous. What can I do to try to help him remain calm? I try to keep myself calm, but I admit that when he starts spinning, I dismount. Probably a good idea. I want to have a trail partner that I can trust to keep me safe, and I guess that's what he's looking for too. Any advice? My biggest advice, my initial response or thought and advice in this situation is get him out of your place and get him in a situation where he's with some other horses. I know it's not always feasible for folks to keep extra horses at home, but this is a case where that horse needs to be in a situation, a facility, something like that, where there are other horses. We've got to take into consideration the fact that the horse is a herd animal and he's a prey species. So by that nature, by the very nature of being a horse, it's nothing short of psychological abuse to keep a horse by himself. All right? So, and as you said, Celeste, he's your first horse. You're still learning. So I'm not holding anything against anybody. I'm not upset with anybody if they have a horse by itself, if they don't know any different, okay? This is something I feel very strongly about. A horse should absolutely never, under any reasonable circumstances, be living in a condition, in a situation where they are by themselves. That's just, it completely goes against their nature, all right? So kind of reviewing, Celeste, what you talked about with your horse. He was always nervous to begin with. Now he's on his own, essentially, in his mind, looking out for everything in the world by himself. He's got nobody, as far as he's concerned, that he can rely on, at least when you're on his back even, right? Because you've said that he's not trusting of you on his back. So when you're riding, there's no one that he has to rely on, so he's going completely off of instinct and self-preservation. Not to mention, you're worried on him, so he says, well, geez, now I got to take care of both of us. I got to save both our butts against the big scary world. This is why, as you said, he's more jittery, more skittish, more nervous around things that he didn't used to be, because he's on high alert, right? He can't help that. He can't help that. My guess would be that if you get this horse in a boarding situation, at least half of your problems will be gone right now. That would be my guess. You let him be out with a herd for 2 days, your problems are going to be mostly gone. That's my guess. Moving on into that, you mentioned that you're not completely confident, and yet you want your horse to be a trusting partner, right, who can keep you safe. And I totally agree, that's what we all need. But the partner that you are presenting your horse with, as far as your horse is concerned, is not trustworthy and isn't there to keep him safe. So again, that's going to put him on high alert, all right? And he's already on high alert because he's now in a situation where he's living and fending and faring for himself. It's so much of the same issue, really, compounded. So the biggest and best advice that I can give in a situation like this is get that horse into a situation where he's around other horses when you're not there. This is why you said, Celeste, in your question, that he's great on the ground, sticking with you at liberty, turning when you turn, stopping when you stop, going everywhere you ask him to go. Of course he is. That's social interaction, right? And he's doing what he can to please you, and he's saying, you walk through the gate and he says, thank God, here's somebody who's going to look out for me, because I don't want to have to look out for me by myself. We hear these old wives' tales, or whatever you want to call it, just crappy advice is what I call it, where people will say, oh, that horse just wants to be the boss. BS. All that is BS. I've never met a horse who wanted to be the boss. A horse always, from my experience, and I've only experienced working with riding, 5,000-8,000 horses, so it's limited experience. But in all of that experience, I've never yet met one that actually wanted to be the boss. I've always met horses who wanted to make sure that the other person in that situation, or the other horse, the other partner in that situation, was qualified to be the boss. All right, and that's when people run into trouble, right? When the horse is not sure that they're qualified. And so on the ground, he says, thank God, here's somebody who's qualified, at least on the ground. And then you climb on his back and you're a little nervous because you realize that he's not quite that same horse that he used to be. And he says, oh, geez, now we're starting all over, and now I've got to be the boss, and I'm not sure about all these things anyway, so I'm going to be really worried, and I've got to take care of both of us, right? So, again, it's all, to me, it sounds like it's all the same problem, just compounding and compounding and compounding upon itself. So, I sound like a broken record, but the best I can say is get that horse in a situation where there are other horses. Yes, you go out to see him every day. Yes, he's with you every day, but let's be realistic. You're not with him 24 hours a day. Or maybe that's just my guess, right? That you're not with him 24 hours a day, where he could be, would be, should be with other horses in a group, in a situation where he's got that social interaction. They're very social animals. We all know that. And they need to be with those other horses or other individuals as often as possible. So to be with your horse an hour or 2 hours, or I don't care, to be with your horse 5 hours every day, that's 19 hours that he's left to fend for himself as far as he's concerned. And keep in mind, it could be the quietest plug on the planet, but instincts are the same. You can't change Mother Nature. You can condition responses, you can train answers, you can educate a horse, to a very high level, but you can't change Mother Nature. All right. So and that's basically what putting a horse in a situation where he's living by himself is doing. It's basically saying, all right, Mother Nature, put on your boxing gloves and let's go at it, right? And there's one thing I know for sure. Mother Nature, she's going to win every time. She's a pretty strong broad. So we can't fight that. So, again, whether that is bringing other horses to your home or just getting your horse into a situation where you're boarding. And a beginner rider, like you mentioned, to me, you should be in a boarding situation anyway. You should have a circle of friends around you, a support circle around you anyway, to help you feel more confident with your horse under saddle for your success, right? So Celeste, I hope that's helpful to you. Get your horse to a boarding facility. In the long run, it's going to be cheaper and safer for you anyway than keeping them at home. And if there's anybody else who's found this advice helpful, or if you think your friends need to hear this advice, please feel free, tag them, share this with them in the comments below. I'd really appreciate that. Question of the day for you, since we're talking about this whole herd psychology, herd dynamic stuff. Question of the day for you: how many horses does your horse live with and interact with on a daily basis? That I'm really curious to hear about. Leave your answers, please, in the comments section below this video. How many horses does your horse live with or interact with on a daily basis? Don't forget, gang, you keep sending in your questions. I'll keep talking about horses. Thanks so much.